I would like to juxtapose that with Carolina and today's developments, which felt like they had been percolating for a while and a long time coming. But the Carolina Panthers moved on from Frank Reich as head coach after 11 games. Michael, do you realize that Frank Reich lasted less time with the Panthers than Lou Holtz did with the Jets, Bobby Petrino did with the Falcons, or the aforementioned Urban Meyer did with the Jaguars? 11 games to 13 games for Holtz, Petrino, and Urban Meyer. I'd say it was early November when I first started to get wind that Frank Reich was on the hot seat. And so here we are. He's out. Again, another coach that David Tepper, the owner or chairman, if you prefer, the Panthers has fired. And also, since then, they have fired Josh McCown, speaking of the Texans, Josh McCown as quarterback coach and Deuce Staley as running back coach. And reportedly, these decisions...
Assistant head coach and running back
and
coach.
Assistant head coach. And assistant head coach and running backs coach. And what's interesting is, reportedly, the interim head coach, Chris Tabor, formerly the special teams coach, he subbed in as the interim in Chicago a couple of years back. He and Jim Caldwell, special advisor Jim Caldwell, they came to the determination to fire Staley and McCown. So, and I'll come back to all that in a second. But before I come back to that, feels like we should start with hindsight, which for some of us was foresight. And then I'll give you the floor.
Yeah.
They had their coach last year. They had an interim coach last year when they fired Matt Rule, who not only kept this team together, but had this team like competitive down the stretch. And Steve Wilkes. So we talked about Steve Wilkes and him being, I know you were being serious, but I think, he was scapegoated for the Minnesota loss, but that was a bad call.
No, I was messing around. I was messing around.
Well, no, but you weren't scapegoated. You were saying other people were. But bottom line is, it was
right.
He's now obviously the defensive coordinator of the 49ers when he very well could have and should have been the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. And here David Tepper is looking for a head coach yet again. What say you?
Mike, I know you've said this before. I know you probably have said this to your friends. Maybe you said this to your kids. And it's an old saw, and maybe my mother said it to me, and my grandmother and grandfather, and just aunts and uncles. When people show you who they are, believe them. When people show you who they are, believe them. So David Tepper, last year and this year, has shown us who he is. Last year, there's no reason. It was just infuriating to watch. I'm not a Carolina Panthers fan. I don't think I've ever put the Carolina Panthers in my bets, your money. I've never put anything on the line for the Panthers. It's just from afar, looking at a situation, looking at a poor situation and seeing how it improved overnight, it was obvious to me and others that Steve Wilkes had given David Tepper what he now craves, which is credibility and competitiveness. He gave him that last year. So this year, Tepper allegedly, reporters heard this, when he left the locker room after a 17-10 loss to the Titans, he left the locker room shouting F-bombs at what he had just seen. That was progress from last year, his last game. Steve Wilkes' last game as interim coach, David Tepper was nowhere to be found. I don't know if he was cussing or not. I don't know if he knows that there was a game happening because he was checked out of what Steve Wilkes had done for his franchise. So, this is just, it is so disappointing, Mike, that Frank Reich, and he may not have been the right man for the job, but Frank Reich got everything that Steve Wilkes never got. Frank Reich got the all-star coaching staff, offensive gurus and support and aggressiveness and a contract from Tepper, and they moved from 9 to 1 to the top of the draft to get the guy that David Tepper allegedly wanted, not necessarily Frank Reich, and maybe that's part of the problem. That Tepper is a little too involved and feels like that maybe he can buy his way to competitiveness and credibility, when sometimes all you got to do is step back. Deep-pocketed people, well-resourced people, all you got to do is step back and let talented people do their jobs. But here he is.
People do their jobs, yep. So
here he is, just kind of stuck in his rut.
I just want to talk about the quarterback thing. One of my favorite phrases is, success has many parents, but failure is an orphan.
Yeah.
You can't, like, organizationally, they've been preaching unanimity, if I'm saying that right. Like, it's been unanimous that they wanted Bryce Young, and Bryce Young's circumstances, the Panthers' own doing, is why Bryce Young is struggling. They'll tell anybody who's listening from the Panthers that if you switch situations, again, it's just the Panthers, switch situations with Stroud, Stroud will be struggling, Bryce will be thriving.
Exactly.
It's probably not that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's just their perspective. I'm saying, but like this idea that Tepper picked the quarterback and they didn't, like, that's convenient and easy to say now when the issues are probably more the circumstances, which you and I both know. A lot of times these quarterbacks, through infrastructure or lack thereof, through no fault of their own, their careers are doomed because they're drafted into the wrong place. It's like you can't pick your family. If you're, and I love my family. I know you love yours, but so I don't want nobody to think that's not a shot. But like, you can't help the family you're born into. It's like likewise, you can't pick the team that drafts you most of the time, unless you're John Elway or Eli Manning or what have you. So anyway, so that's one thing. What's ironic to me, and fitting, or both, is that from everything I understand, like, you know what Frank Reich's downfall was? Leadership. For all the talk about the scheme and the system and play calling, I'll get to that in a second, his downfall was he was not a dynamic leader. Do you know how much of a leader of men you have to be? What were they, 6-6? After Matt Rule was fired last year, after trading Christian McCaffrey under Steve Wilkes, do you know how much of a leader of men you have to be to hold it down under those circumstances the way Steve Wilkes did? So Frank Reich has been on the hot seat for weeks, if not longer, because the Panthers realized that they didn't have the right guy up in front of the team. But they had that guy. I'm just saying what the streets is saying. I'm telling you what the streets have been saying before the day, long before the day. And this ain't ownership. This ain't executive. This ain't ownership.
I kind of let them off the hook.
No, I'm not letting them off the hook. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying this is ownership, management, coaching, players did not respond to Frank Reich. They responded to Steve Wilkes. So David Tepper is responsible for letting go of a guy who had the very qualities that Frank Reich did not possess. So from we can get into schematics and all that kind of stuff, but I'm saying I'm saying the same thing you're saying, just in a different way. You had the guy in-house. You had the guy to lead the team. But smartest guy in the room, billionaire, hedge fund billionaire, they all think, oh, well, this is what a head coach looks like. This is what I want from a head coach. I want an offensive guy. I want a guy to mentor the quarterback. Yo, man, get the right leader for your team. And so all I would implore David Tepper to do is to not sit back and try to find the sexiest and the hottest offensive wonderkin that he can, but look internally at your two coordinators, okay? You got Thomas Brown, your offensive coordinator, who's been undermined from the beginning by Frank Reich, who, as you know, has been compared to a cross between Sean McVay and Mike Tomlin. So you got Thomas Brown in your own building, and you got Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator, in your own building, a hot head coaching candidate, who's the defense, despite all the injuries, has been holding it down. So all I would implore David Tepper to do is to not have this wandering eye for like, look, there's Ben Johnson over there, or oh my goodness, there's a Bobby Slowick over there. Like, oh, let me get like, you got guys internally, the same one you had with Steve Wilkes, that might be the answer if you open your mind and listen to the right people and evaluate from a place of not knowing it all, but hey, like, let me do some actual homework and investigation and getting to know these people and how players respond to them, as opposed to who I think in my own paradigm should be the leader of my organization. That's why the common denominator when you've gone through this many coaches, not just in the NFL, but with a soccer team, is that you're doing it wrong. Somebody said this to me earlier, and I loved it. I repeated it. Right. You're doing something wrong on the front end. I do like the phrase, hire slowly and fire quickly. I do respect just moving on. You know, if you know it's not working, and like I said, this didn't happen as a result of losing to the Titans. This was percolating for a while. But on the front end, when you're doing your hiring process, you're missing something. You either listen to the wrong people or you're looking for the wrong thing, but you're missing something. I hope for the Panthers, for Bryce Young, and for that fan base and that franchise, that he figures out what he's doing wrong on the front end so that we're not here again next year.
You said hire slowly and fire quickly?
Hire slowly, fire quickly, yes.
All right.
I like the sound
everything
of it.
You said. I do. I like the sound of it too. Everything you said, I think, is good, solid advice for David Tepper, or what he could do. And this takes a tremendous amount of humility. Look to San Francisco. Look to San Francisco.
Humility on whose part?
Like, hey,
his or yours?
No, I'm saying look to San Francisco. They got a defensive coordinator who is going to be in contention again. He's going to have a good defense. He has a good defense right now. He did not get a fair shake in his 2 very brief coaching stints. He just really got a raw deal in Arizona. Steve Wilkes, of course,
Go back.
I'm talking about.
Interest, yeah. Go
got
back.
a raw deal in Arizona. He got a bad deal in Carolina. And you know he can do the job if you give him. He did the job without all the bells and whistles.
Right.
He didn't get a chance to pick his coaching staff. He didn't get the support of ownership. Dog, you didn't go to his games, Tepper. You didn't go to his games. You didn't go to the game. You know, so all these things that Frank Reich had in place and still wasn't able to succeed, was only able to win 1 game. Steve Wilkes, I think, what was he 4-5 or 4-4, something like that? I think he won 4 games.
I think he was 6-6.
Right.
Well, I think
was
it
it
was 6-6. Might have been.
Okay,
yeah, I'll look it up.
better.
Keep talking. I'll look it up.
Yeah. So and he did that. They traded Christian McCaffrey too.
Right.
So
right.
McCaffrey's out, and you gotta make everything make sense. You gotta keep it together in season. No training camp, no OTAs, nothing. It's just you.
Right.
It's just you and your
6 and 6.
imagination.
That team played
6 and 6.
hard.
Come
Both
on
teams
now.
played hard. That team played hard. Which is why, and given the history of black interim coaches, I'm glad Thomas Brown and Ejiro Evero did not get elevated to interim coach. And miss me with this whole, we need an offensive coach for the quarterback. No, you need a good coach, because some of the greatest quarterbacks in history have been coached by defensive coaches.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.